Everyday Juggler, your source for juggling highlights, interviews, tutorials, and reviews. And now your host, Sean Livingston.
Hey everybody, and thanks for tuning in to the second part of my interview with David Nair. Before we get into the talk, I just want to remind you that you can now listen to these podcasts in the iTunes Store. If you would kindly take some time to go over and rate and review this podcast, that would be great. It'll help more people see this podcast. At the end of the first part of my interview with David Nair, we just got done talking about different variations of fractional force bounce juggling patterns. All right, let's get into it. One question I had, and then I want to get back to the three kind of disciplines of juggling. But one thing I noticed, what you're talking about, how some jugglers juggle like how it looks, and some based on the rhythm, and
their primary input for their own system for their own homeostatic system, how they keep it together.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So when I'm tossing the balls and I'm catching them, I'm thinking of rhythms, but that's based on when the ball lands in my hands.
You're hearing when it lands in your hand?
Right. And
so you're very, very rhythm-centric.
Right.
Because you certainly are spotting the ball at the peak, right? That's how you...
Right.
Main information about where the ball is you're spotting the peak. There are some people who will focus out and not spot the peak, but that information, the peak tells you whether your patterns, and when you're listening to your hands,
watching you do bounce juggling, the sound doesn't happen when it touches your hands. So
no, I don't know if have you ever had the opportunity to play a pipe organ, a real pipe organ, or I actually once played the Coralon, the bell keyboard at Rockefeller Chapel in Chicago. You press a key, some long fraction of a second later, you hear the bell ring, right?
Okay.
And the bell is hundreds of feet away from you, and there's an activation in the sound. Or if you've ever sung in a choir, I once sang in a choir. There's a lot of dual choir music written in the late Baroque period, which was designed for choirs at opposite ends of churches. So you put the conductor, or if you've seen a marching band on a big football field, they have a whole array of people visually conducting them so that they're in sequence, right? Mm-hmm. So you learn to hear, I am moving my pattern before it hits the ground. I am hearing the ground pattern. Mm-hmm. So I am just knowing what the I believe the technical term in engineering is the hysteresis. I'm knowing what the delay is in the energy of the system.
Mm-hmm. So that just takes a lot of practice.
Imagine trying to split the 5-ball force bounce beat with that. It's really it takes it's another muscle to learn. Yeah, you can do it. And so with a 5-ball force bounce, if you want to throw it under your leg, you can get confused between the bounce and the toss, and the timing and the rhythm and the what you're watching. Mm-hmm. That's for me in going back to the curriculum of how you teach people juggling. That's one of my favorite. I have two favorite early patterns of a 3-ball variation because they teach other coordination. They're a generalizing pattern. One is learning to put a ball under your chin so that you can simultaneously make the throw with one hand, while with the other hand you're taking a ball you're already holding and put it under the chin. So it's how to learn synchronous throws out of an asynchronous pattern. And you have to learn the timing of that is completely separated, right? It's the first easy kind of separation pattern. It goes along to being able to balance an object on your head while you're juggling, is to learn to separate two separate streams. Mm-hmm. Or lift your leg and get the ball under your leg. The sequence of lifting your leg and getting the toss under your leg. It's a very early learning how to split that thing. Mm-hmm. And you lift your leg before you make the throw, right? It's the same thing. You anticipate. Mm-hmm. You get off the bus a stop before I do.
Right. All right. So you like to teach people, and then there's two other important parts to your juggling. What makes you a juggler?
For me, so it's teaching, performing, and then mastery. And the mastery, you could some people call it sport juggling, or just trying to break records, trying to do stuff you've never done before.
Okay.
I'm about to add. I have the good fortune. I'll give a plug for another juggler I really like. I would suggest to you, Scott Sorenson is a member. He lives here in Austin now. Is a member of our juggling club. So for me, nice to have a colleague to talk about really hard stuff with. I've been watching, so I'm a subscriber and fan of his channel. I think it has Superman in it, Super Juggler or something. He always wears a Superman shirt.
I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah. So he's been really working with ball bouncing on his head, and so for him, 3 stages. He does his same numbers records, but with a tall pole balanced on his head, relatively easier. Then with a club balance, which is a shorter balance, relatively harder, and then with a ball bouncing, much even harder still. So I was thinking, well, what am I going to do in the force bouncing universe that's equivalent to balancing, right? Because it's not just a 7-ball record; it's a 7-ball record with a pole balanced on your head. Well,
I'd like to see you do that.
I can't balance a pole on my head while force bouncing. But I decided an equivalent, not exactly an equivalent, is to stand on a rollabola. So I'll balance me while which is
there you go.
I can, I have a long time ago, I don't know, my daughter, it must be like 14, 15 years ago, I used to get my daughter on my shoulders doing something while I was on a rollabola force bouncing. And I think I have a cute little, I think you might have been 4 or 5. She dropped force bounce 2 balls in parallel, left and right hand together, while I did a 5-ball force bounce around the outside of her. Well, she stood on the inside of me, and I was on the outside of her on a rollabola. So
that's awesome.
I imagine a whole category. How long could I do a 7-ball force bounce pattern while keeping myself balanced? There's another thing. There are some people who force bounce who say, "Hey, you got to do it on the floor." Well, no, not really. If you think it's easier to be at a taller height and do the pattern, I doubt that.
They probably never tried.
No, well, they're different. For me, my response originally was, well, that's like doing a 7-ball toss pattern in a phone booth. It is 7 balls in a phone booth as a record, but it isn't necessarily the longest run of 7 balls. You might want to give people unlimited height in their patterns. And the IJA rules always said you could do at any height you wanted as long as the bouncing surface was parallel. Because very, very early there was a lot of other interesting patterns. Mr. Kennedy does all these interesting rolling, shapes and cones, and they're pretty cool. But again, different pattern. I actually, in my force bounce pattern, if you compare it to others, I have a very, very short top of the pattern. So the ball pretty much comes right to my hand.
Right.
So I have an extremely fast pattern for my mechanics. So if you stand on the floor and do a 7-ball pattern, you're either extremely fast or you usually have a loop going over the top. My mechanics has always been with a very low cap on it, and it's what I've always taught people to. And I have the slowest pattern I can operate within that. So there's a piece to, as you learn force bouncing, to have a very efficient hand movement which perfectly captures the ball as it comes over the top, and as opposed to catches it early and rushes the pattern. It's equivalent to people who are in toss juggling are learning and their hands move up and the pattern runs faster than it should. You don't have this perfectly synchronized toss, catch, and throw. Toss, watch, see, and catch. All 3 of those things should be at the same time,
right? More
or less. So for me to do higher number patterns, I need to keep climbing higher and higher and higher.
Right.
My 7-ball force bounce pattern is at 305 throws a minute, which is pretty fast. The 8-ball pattern that I'm doing is at 370. Really fast.
Yeah.
My 9-ball, I've done 20 catches at 9-ball force bounce. I don't have a video of it. My guess is it was well over 400. Super fast.
Wow.
I can't do that anymore. I'm not that fast. One of the things I do to supplement my the record setting is I weight train 4 times a week. I have a buddy. One of my former juggling partners is a powerlifter.
Okay.
So he inspired me to get in the gym. I've been doing that for 7 years. I'm 20 pounds heavier than before I started. I'm stronger.
Oh, wow.
I'll be 55 in December coming up. So as I got older, I had the perception I was getting slower. No, I think just getting weaker.
I see.
Now I'm working on strength. One of the contributions is endurance. I think that the 6-ball force bounce pattern has an element of endurance in it. It's hard to hold your core steady enough for that much work for that long.
Mm-hmm. So,
I just thought of what it was.
All right.
Okay. So one of the ways of tracking records is you have like a toss pattern, and then you have a toss pattern isolated. Like the 8-club pattern is a qualify of 8 clubs, and then there's a qualify of 8 clubs isolated. If you look at the Anthony Gatto, I hope we're all Anthony Gatto archive fans, because that's amazing juggling. He stands on these, 2 little footies raised about 18 or 24. I don't know how far off the ground they are, but it looks like they're well above knee height. And that's it. You can't move your feet. Mm-hmm. If you're going to learn to put your throws in the right place, this is the logic. You need to put your throws where they need to be, mm-hmm. the right height, right time, right place. Not being able to move your feet will really develop that skill. All right, so there's a whole other class of world records which is talking about isolated. Well, I juggle from a platform. I am isolated. I cannot move. You'll look at the end of some of my patterns. I've lost the ball by a few inches off of my reach. I can't. If I was on the ground, I'd go get it. Mm-hmm. My 5-ball pattern is on the ground because for me that was the most efficient pattern. Mm-hmm. The 6-ball and 7-ball patterns are up off the ground. They're isolated. Mm-hmm. So I would argue that's again harder still.
Yep.
Because you can't fix it.
So for those that are interested in getting into force bounce juggling, what are like 2 or 3 tips for how to get started with that?
Here's the sequence I would suggest. First of all, find a decent ball. Get a ball that has at least an 86 or 88% rebound, and most of the silicone balls are in that. The way you measure that is you drop a ball from a certain height, and you see how much height comes back. Okay, that's the percentage rebound against gravity. That means that you have like 12% energy to add back in. So the difference between an 88% and a 90% rebound is 10 versus 12. It's it's a good 8-9% more efficient ball, less energy into it. Okay, so find a decent ball. Always buy more than you think you're going to do, because you want to have a nice matching set, and they tend to age, and you tend to get familiar with them, and it's hard to find another one again. So I buy bean bags, 3 dozen at a time, for tossing. Then the posture I suggest, I would stand with your feet about 6 inches apart, toes front. Try to stand up fairly straight, and then lean forward so that your eyes are just out over your toes, looking down. And you're going to work in front of your toes. The ball in a force bounce pattern, the ball that comes from your right hand is going to bounce from a fairly wide position, about a foot wide of your body, to in front of the same side toe, to in front of your right toe. And then it bounces up the inside of the pattern to the left. So the net pattern looks like the VW, looks like that VW sign. Right? So the bounce comes down the outside and bounces up the inside. You scoop it up with your hand and move it around the outside and bounce it on the other side. So your left hand throw then bounces in front of the left toe and bounces up. Key pointers. Have your arms throw from wide enough so that there's enough horizontal travel in the throw. Classic error in learning is you throw it straight down, it comes straight back. You need the ball to actually cross. It's the idea, again, of the 2 peak points in a juggling pattern. Only in force bouncing, we're doing a reverse cascade, right? It's actually peeking in from the outside. However, when you're tossing, you're still doing this wax-on position, which is hand travels up the inside, around the outside. It travels up through your center of mass triangle, so it doesn't disturb your body, and then it travels out wide. In force bouncing, with that reverse pattern, your hand is traveling in exactly the same flow. Only now you're picking up and you're throwing around the outside and the bottom. Because the bounce throw is down while you're traveling on the outside. The toss juggling is up while you're traveling on the inside. Right? So when you're down, you're passing around the outside. hand travels to the same side, crosses to the other. Reverse cascade. Listen to the beat. Listen to the rhythm. And I believe I can get a beginner juggler learning that faster than a toss, because the catch is at one of the benefits of bounce juggling is the catch is when the ball has slowed down. When you get to more complicated numbers patterns, I think because of the limited height and the timing issues, it becomes more difficult than toss juggling.
Right.
But with three, I think it's an easy thing to do.
All right. I had a couple more questions. I really wanted to talk to you about partner juggling, but I don't think we're going to have time for that this time, so we might have to do this again.
Sure.
So
good for hours of juggling talk. I had I'll just tell you, I had a really super cool 1 hour long conversation with Albert Lucas, who came into town to do a little show. Super nerdy juggling training secrets.
That's awesome.
Really interesting to see how another super nerd in the world. I'm totally a fan of the juggling success piece that Dittmar put out. I don't know if you know that.
I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, there's another about how to coach and teach juggling. So it's a topic I love to do.
Okay. So you said you performed. Do you have, if you could think of all the performances of your life, which is many, is there any that sticks out as your favorite?
I would say the most memorable was on a piazza in Italy. So I spent this year in India with street jugglers and working on linguistics and so forth. I came back into the Western world, spending a chunk of time in Italy with my girlfriend, who was in India with me for the year. And I got a gig. I was making a living in Italy street performing. So that was live in a tent as many times as I could in a week, which was only about 3 or 4, because I would get exhausted, go out, make money. In that time, this is 1979, 1980, you got paid in 100 lira coins, which were about the size of a 50 cent. They're closer to a 50-cent piece than a quarter. And literally, I would get 30 or 40 pounds of money, and then that's about all I could carry. Then I'd go home. If she had zipped open the sleeping bag, I got in it before I fell asleep. If she didn't, I fell asleep on top of it with my arms curled up. I happened to do a show. My favorite place to do a show. A lot of this was in the islands around Venice, where the tourists were camping. My favorite way to do a show was to go into a restaurant at dinner time and just shut up and do a show. The restaurant was usually delighted to have you, probably would feed you, and the audience would pay you. I happened to catch, I think, the producer of an Italian, I think, Channel 1. I don't remember. It was. I think Italy had 2 or 3 channels at that point. This was their main show. It was their afternoon talk show. The equivalent of the Oprah show. Would you show up? We're doing a shot in a piazza over here. Actually, that was in Siena. That was not in Venice. We're doing a show. Would you show up? We'll do a segment with you. Okay. It was an evening show. It was right at dusk. So imagine worst possible situation for doing a show. It's dusk. It's somewhat windy. Not so bad if you're a bounce juggler. But this wasn't bounce. This was an up in the air show because it was on cobblestone.
Not so good for bounce juggling.
That's not so good. And the entire show is in Italian, including the interview. Okay.
So you learned yes in Italian, and
well, my early show, probably the first 20 years of me performing, I was entirely silent. I think it's because I spent enough time in different countries. That was my character. It's a sort of a combination between pretty different from Paul Bachman, but it's that sort of clownish character, but a little more Charlie Chaplin or Groucho Harpo Marx.
Okay.
That's why I had that's why I have an animated face, I think, when I do my tricks. Did the show. Lots of fun. Really big audience. There was Italian royalty as part of the interview. I got to meet, Italian princess. And then we were all fed dinner at the end. Show's over. We continue on the piazza, and it was at a an outdoor table space for a restaurant. So we ate. Okay.
So really memorable experience that happened just because you put yourself out there. You weren't even looking for it.
Yeah. For me, that's the best kind of show. Most recently, I've done a couple of weddings, which I think are just fun. Somebody will actually invite jugglers into a wedding.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll do a show with my partner, but I also love to do come learn to juggle. So watching these half drunken wedding party and everybody else with the video running, all learning how to juggle,
that sounds great.
To see the joy and excitement of them getting it, it's just a fun thing to add to a wedding. It's just something cool, and it brings out talents and skills from people, because I'll invite you to learn anything related. So if it's balancing bottles on your nose or whatever, we cover. When I teach for like a high school level group, I'll bring 12 or 15 props out. Let's find out what it is you want to do. All of it's good. I think I'm reasonably mediocre at about 10 or 12 of them. I'm pretty good at about 4 or 5 of them. Yeah.
How have you seen juggling change lives for the better?
You'll have to interview him, but this is my experience of it. I had a juggling partner who I think is now in his late 20s, might be 28, 29 years old, currently a 3-time American world record holder in powerlifting, Rory.
Okay.
And in fact, if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see, hey, here's Rory setting an American. What is this powerlifting video doing on my channel? That's Rory. He used to be my juggling partner. I met him when he was 14 or 15 years old. I was at a middle school science fair, or just an outdoor fair, with my daughter, who was little, and there was a game set up which was an electrical wire, and could you move a circle of metal around it without setting the buzzer off all the way? And I got all the way across and almost all the way back, and I asked, hey, did anybody do any better than that? Again, I'm focusing on mastering whatever the hell's in front of me, then I'll learn how to do it, which is the single most important thing about learning to juggle, is determination. And he said, oh, yeah, there's Rory. He's over there. He got all the way there and back. Oh, I had to go meet Rory. As far as I could tell, Rory at that point had done very, very little juggling and had done a lot of video games. So I spent a chunk of time saying, hey, Rory, learn how to juggle. And then, his mom drove him around. He showed up. We trained a couple of times a week. He became my performing partner. I think he's Flash 9. He qualified 8-balls toss juggling. Pretty solid juggler. He was for a long time, my favorite passing partner. I would tell you, of my passing partners, his characteristic as a passing partner is he will catch anything. Now, some people are excellent at catching. Some people are excellent at throwing. Zach, my numbers passing partner now, the best timing and height perfection. I wish he could catch like Rory and throw like he throws. We would be awesome. Rory would literally catch it. He would do a fencing dive, into a ball behind you and try to catch it. After that, a different juggler, I invited him to get into weightlifting. He got into weightlifting, and he's really darn good at it. He just did a 585-pound squat. I don't know if you have any idea how
that would squish
amazingly
me.
strong that is.
I would die.
So what have I seen juggling do? Maybe it's an inspiration that there's a physical world. You can learn to do it. You have autonomy over it. You can figure out how to train yourself. You can look around for experts, and then you can just, hey, here's something in the physical world that can inspire you, and you go on to do other things.
And obviously, I think that's played a role in your life as well. It's been something that kept you engaged. And
actually, there's a whole nother story, which is my 8th grade gym teacher flunked me in gym. You're not strong. You're not coordinated. You have no endurance. You have no skill. F. Lovely report card. As a freshman, I did running. My brother was a runner, and also had started from, I would say, a similar background of not very physical. And then I had a falling out with a sort of high school soccer team, and went over to the, at that time, girls lacrosse team, and there were lacrosse balls around. I got into juggling, and my father originally inspired me to try it, and then Paul Bachman was the sort of the hey, let's really work on this. But I believe there's a transformation for everybody. You just have to find, I think, the right level of difficulty to be engaged. So it has to be. There's a University of Chicago author who wrote a book on creativity, and he distinguishes, you need just the right level of engagement to be adequately difficult to be inspiring, so that you can see clear accomplishment, but not so incredibly difficult that you are exasperated and can never achieve anything you want. For me, that's the art of teaching juggling, is to find just the right fractional lesson that's exactly where they are. If they do 3 balls, the next lesson is not 4 balls. The next lesson is something adequately difficult with 3 balls that's engaged, that they can get in 10 or 15 minutes. That practice, they get something. And if you can do 3 or 4 of those, you move them along. I would tell you, my wife, Ellie, when I met her 7 years ago, said, I'm not coordinated at all. She passes 8 balls with me. We qualify great. 8 balls, 2 count.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's just a whole different world for her. It's a message. Yeah, if I'm set up to learn, I can learn this. We can all learn these things.
Yeah. All right, so to wrap us up, I just got some quick questions. I don't know. Hopefully the answers will be quick too. What's your favorite trick or formation?
Well, the thing I always imagined getting a novelty license plate about would be 7B F, 7B force bounce pattern. So it's 7B FB.
FP.
7 ball force bounce.
Bounce.
And I think it's because I just spent so much time on getting that pattern, and really working on the details and the mechanics of it to have it flow. What's my favorite thing to do juggling is a different question. I just love hat stealing with Ian. It's just fun. If you look at our videos, we're just having fun. There's nothing hard about it. It's fully engaging until our arms fall off.
Just so you know, when I said hopefully the answer will be quick, it's always a peeve of mine when people say, I've got a short question for you, but that doesn't really mean anything, because the answer could be long. So I just said that.
You can tell how passionate I am about this. This is one of the things that I love to do. I consider juggling to be one of my spiritual practices.
Okay.
This creates meaning and purpose for me. It's a way of contributing to others. It's a way of understanding myself. It's a way of encouraging others to learn how to connect to themselves and to
I
grow.
love it. The passion is fantastic.
Yeah, for me, it's all about personal development. This is the psychokinetic, there's a mind-body connection around that, but the way you treat that. So, I'll give you another example. If somebody is learning juggling and you just see that they have this inner battle, this inner critic going on, it's common enough. I'd say about 30% of people have some kind of inner critic saying, God, I have to get that. Oh, I have to get it. When the test is someone drops and the first thing they say is shit, right? Frustration. If I believe juggling is a way you can work on that inner critic to say, hey, this is where I am. Hey, I can't do this. What can I do? What can I work on? Right? That's working on something that's too difficult. With that, if that person was a juggling student, my first strategy would be I'll engage them in a conversation about what went on with them today. I'll truly engage their brain about something else while they're working on the pattern, get that critic to go away, and just, you'd be surprised how many of them then sustain the pattern. They've learned to take the inner critic away, and then I'll point out what we just did, and then we'll do it again. And then we'll see that critic isn't helping them. And, if you can work on someone's self-esteem or self-judgment. If you're put in an impossible situation with a demand of yourself to do something that is too difficult, you develop a view of the world which is this critical view that you're not good enough, right? Mm-hmm. And what I would tell you is, I'll quote Karate Kid, the original: "No bad student, only bad teacher." Mm-hmm. So you've set yourself up for a situation which is not, mm-hmm. it's not a solvable situation. Right. Work on something you can do. Mm-hmm. Break something difficult down into what you do. I would love to have a really solid 1 minute run of 8-ball force bounce. I am in awe of Alan Sulcs' force bounce patterns. They are amazing. Mm-hmm. His speed and rhythm accuracy is amazing. So I would like to do that. So I am working up to doing that consistently. Mm-hmm. And I spent a bunch of time on a 6-ball pattern in order to get the mechanics. The 6-ball wimpy is different from a cascade that 7 is. So we can talk about the technique there. But one of the benefits of spending time on the 6-ball pattern was, boom, instant 8-ball pattern, much more stable. Mm-hmm. So I'm capable of throwing a 50 catch run of 8 balls, no problem. It's good enough for stage. I would like to get it up over 100. Mm-hmm. I'd like to actually do a full qualify at 10 ball. That would be, I think that's doable force bounce. I think that's mm-hmm. a hell of a pattern.
I'd like to see it.
Based on claims of how hard that is versus cost juggling, that's a hell of a pattern. And I'm getting older, so I'm working as hard as I can at the moment.
Mm-hmm. How do you find time to juggle?
I have a weekly schedule of things I like to do. So I'm fairly so I protect practices. The different question is, how often do I train, and what's my training schedule? I train 3 times a week juggling, and I train weightlifting 4 times a week to support the juggling. The weightlifting is fairly short, but let's just say difficult. Mm-hmm. So I train for probably 2 hours twice a week, and then on Thursdays, when most of those records are set at that church with the juggling meeting here in Austin, it's about 4 hours.
Mm-hmm. So basically, you schedule it in.
I schedule it in, and I do at least an hour a day. Mm-hmm. And if you include the weightlifting, there's specific technique that I'm doing in weightlifting to enhance the movement, range of motion, and movement in the juggling pattern. I believe in cross training.
Cool. Yeah. All right.
And playing music and other things that are rhythmic contribute. So mm-hmm. if Zach goes and plays his cello, it helps his juggling.
I see.
If you if you do balancing, or you do, that it all helps. Mm-hmm. I thoroughly believe in cross training. I believe in, when you're training a pattern, to not do it for more than 4 or 5 minutes at a time. Break it, go do something new. Mm-hmm. That you keep it fresh and you're engaged, constantly engaged.
That kind of makes me wonder if there's things that we do that, if we kind of change our mindset on them and thought about them as contributing to our juggling, if we could make everyday things we do kind of contribute to how well we juggle.
Classic thing. I teach a class in a room where sometimes I bring my dinner in on a dinner plate. Never have someone open the door for you. Mm-hmm. This is a balancing opportunity with something you care about. Mm. You'll see jugglers are always doing that. They're always trying to carry every damn thing out of their car on their own without any help with the door
mm-hmm.
open.
So for people who work at restaurants, they're in prime place.
It's a juggling skill. Yeah.
All right. So favorite festival you've been to?
Favorite festival? The most memorable one, I think, has to be my very first IJA. I think age 15, opening the door and seeing a 5-ball club duration competition for the world record. But other than that, the festival I go to is the Juggle Fest here in Austin every year. I haven't been traveling a lot. I think I'm going to IJA for the 3rd time in my life: 1976, 77, and then 2016. Pretty big gap. Because it's El Paso and it's my folks from Texas here doing it, right. So I think I'll help them.
Yeah, I think you're gonna get roped into that.
It'd be fun to do. I'm gonna do a bounce toss. I think I'm competing in bounce toss passing and ball passing. Mm-hmm. It'd just be fun to do that.
I think that we all know the answer to this already, but we might not. It could be up one of two things, I think. Favorite prop to use?
Yeah, it's got to be a bouncy ball.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a lot of fun with the hats too, so.
Yeah, the hat. Actually, it's hard. I got to give you 3. I really like passing beanbags. I really like hat stealing, and I really like bounce juggling.
Great.
And they're different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Favorite brand of prop maker? That didn't really make sense, but you know what I meant.
Actually, I really like John Nord's juggling thingies for beanbags. That's the one I usually recommend to something. John makes them himself. I just asked him for, a super specific 105-gram ball that was exactly my size, which was in between sizes he's made. Wow. I don't know how many of his sizes came as a result of requests I've made him. But it's a beautiful ball. I got 36 of them. They were within a gram of what I said. They were all 105 grams plus or minus 0.5 grams. I have a tenth of a gram scaler. They were beautifully made. I know it because he measured it and made it for me. Mm-hmm. And they're very reasonably priced. And he's here in Kinney, Texas, not far from me.
All right.
And he makes them my color and whatever.
We'll put a link to his. I assume he's a site in the video notes.
Yeah. Bounce balls has been different brands. I wish I think I'm going to end up making my own bounce ball. I do enough of my other life as an inventor and product innovator that I think I'm going to make a little better ball. I like it light. I like it extremely high bounce. Durability, I'm open to something wearing out. The ball that I set my records with are Oddballs. I will tell you, if you do Oddballs, the dark-colored balls do not bounce as high. You need to test each individual one. They have a variation in quality, and a 1% rebound difference is enough to screw up a numbers pattern. So I only use the red, yellow, orange, and blue ones. I don't use the green, purple, and black ones.
Okay. Is the dye heavier? I
believe there's a contamination problem and an ozone problem. Okay. I believe they also are not getting adequate mold pressure. Okay. If I were to debug their molding process, I think they could do better.
Okay.
If they would do one without color, I think that would be even better. Please just use the back substrate. But it's not a conversation to have with them. This is the father who designed. It's the ball I've been using for 30 years. I could show you how beat up one of these is. I have one that looks like the moon. I refreshed it only this year. So my older set of balls actually has 2% higher elastic rebound, which is why I love them.
Okay.
They were 92%, the best in the world that I could find. I'm now in the 89.5% range, and I'm frustrated about it. Mm-hmm. But they're round, so when I bounce them off the ground, they actually come back with the same reflection angle that you'd want, as opposed to some random number going somewhere else.
Right.
Of the silicone balls, I've used Dube. I've used a number of them. They're well molded. They're accurate and round. They're just not. They're heavier, and they don't bounce as high. Mm-hmm. They have beautiful feel. So they're different. I've seen a couple of other balls. I haven't found anything special yet. Okay. I'm going to make one. I'm going to make the best ball.
You're going to make the best one. So
I'm going to try and get something up in the 94% range.
We'll be waiting. David Cain told us last week that he's writing a history book on juggling, and you're telling us you're going to make a new ball.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
All right, so
I'd like to actually talk to David about some of the bounce juggling world, because I think we overlap in interesting ways.
We actually didn't talk about bounce juggling at all. So next
He's
time.
a little younger than me, I think. Yeah.
All right, so lastly, if people want to find your stuff, where can they find you? And then a word of advice to the juggling community at large.
I don't necessarily have a video channel like Scott Sorenson or something, but I do have videos that I put up. You can look at it. You can look David Nair on YouTube, and you've put links up to that. I think it's Nimble LLC is the.
Mm-hmm. I'll link to it in
if you're welcome to post a message there, or message me. I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk about juggling. Tell me your second question.
And then just a kind of a send-off advice to the juggling community at large.
Work on things that are the right difficulty, that are just the perfect learning edge. Something that there's some piece of what you're working on that you can learn today or tomorrow, and you can see progress on it. And at the same time, I say that work on something that's really damn hard first when you're fresh. So warm up and then work on the hard thing. So in the 4 hours I do on Thursday, I might spend 5 or 10 or 12 minutes figuring out how far away the floor is, because I do bounce juggling. And then I work on the hardest damn thing I can do. So that's when I'm working on 8 and 9 ball patterns. And then when I'm done with that main burst of energy, it might include going for a record, or it might include a particular technique. Like I spent 2 hours on those 8 ball fractional patterns last Thursday.
Okay.
And then I go have fun. Then I work on the hat steals, and I work on passing, and I work on coaching, and do the rest of it.
Awesome. That's great. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching this week. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks a lot, David, for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. I was excited to get the invitation.
And don't forget to go check out my site. I just put up a document, 15 ways to take your juggling to the next level. You can get it for free. All you got to do is sign up for my newsletter. So until next time, keep on juggling.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, be sure to support the channel. Leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe.